Good day everyone, I am Ms. Divine Ramirez and I'll be presenting the continuation of Mr. Orsina's report, the BATAS PAMBANSA number 232. So first is section 38. It is all about the school finance and assistance. So in this section of the document, it outlines that secondary and post-secondary schools are allowed to charge tuition and other fees. The purpose of these fees is to either improve school facilities or to increase the number of students the school can accommodate. Next is the income from other sources. So in this section, it details how government-funded educational institutions can receive funding from various sources beyond their regular government allocation. These sources include grants, donations, and income generated from any business activities the school might run. However, the use of this additional income must follow specific rules and regulations established by relevant government bodies to ensure proper financial management and accountability. Next is section 40 and 41. So this section are all about funding of private schools. So in section 40, private schools can get funding from their own investment, equity contributions, tuition fees, grants, loans, subsidies, investment income, and other sources. And in section 41, the government may give aid to private schools or grants or scholarship loans from government financial institutions because they play a supporting role in the education system. However, this aid is conditional. The private schools programs must meet specific educational requirements and standards and contribute to national development goals. Next is section 42. This is all about tuition and other school fees. So in here, each private school sets its own tuition and other fees. These fees are legally collectible, but their implementation must adhere to rules and regulations established by the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sports. Section 43. In here is all about income from other sources. The government recognizes private schools and may accept grants, legacies, donations, gifts, bequests, or devices from individuals, institutions, corporations, foundations, trusts, philanthropic organizations, or research institutions. Additionally, these private schools are allowed to engage in any supplemental business activities to generate income for their operations or to lower students' fees. Section 44. It is all about institutional funds. Money from tuition fees and other school income is considered institutional funds. Schools can combine these funds, all or part, under joint management to increase financial resources. And in Section 45, it is all about incentives to education. It is the declaration of policy. So the state's policy is to create incentive programs to encourage community participation in developing the education sector to meet national education goals. And in Section 46, it is relating to school property. Real estate, land, buildings, etc. used exclusively for educational purposes will be subject to real property tax of 15% of the market value. The money collected will go to a special private education fund managed by a local private school board. This board will be formed in each municipality or chartered city with private educational institutions with mayor or representative as chairman. The board will include representative from the institutions and alumni. Additionally, 50% of an extra 1% real estate tax as per Republic Act 5447 will also go to this fund. Provided, finally, that in municipalities or chartered cities with more than 15 private institutions and over 5,000 students, the private school board will be increased to a maximum of 14 members. The number of members will be determined proportionally by the Minister of Education, Culture, and Sports. The private school board will create its own rules for financing annual programs and projects, prioritizing student scholarship, improvements to instruction, including labs and equipment, library books and periodicals, and community extension services. In Section 47, it is relating to gifts or donations to schools. Gifts or donations to government or recognized schools, colleges, or universities are tax exempt. However, these gifts must be used for improving classrooms, labs, or libraries. The funds cannot benefit any school officers, directors, or owners, except for faculty support or endowed professorships. In Section 48, it is relating to earnings from established scholarship funds. In here, earnings from investment of established scholarship funds, from gifts or other resources at government or recognized schools are tax exempt as long as the earnings are used to fund scholarships for financially needy students. Once the scholarship fund is fully used, any remaining balance becomes subject to tax. Section 49 is all about school dispersal program. In here, profits from the sale of transfer of property from private school, college, or university as part of a government-approved dispersal program are tax exempt only if the proceeds are reinvestigated within 1 year in a new or existing school at the dispersal site. Otherwise, all taxes are immediately due. In Section 15 is the conversion to educational foundation. Section 15. An educational institution can become a non-stock, non-profit educational foundation following rules set by the Ministries of Education, Culture, and Sports, and Finance. If a for-profit educational institution dissolves, its net assets after paying debts will be transferred to another non-profit educational institutions or distributed as a court deems best to fulfill the original organization's purpose or to the states. Next is Section 51. This is all about the government assistance for students. So in here, the government will provide financial aid to financially disadvantaged but deserving students. This aid may include state scholarship, grants, educational loan, fund assistance, or subsidized tuition at state colleges and universities. These programs must also reserve spots for academically qualified students from minority cultural communities. In Section 52, these are the grant of scholarship pursuant to existing laws. So in here, educational institutions are encouraged to provide scholarship according to existing laws and any future scholarship laws. And in Section 53, assistance from the private sector. So in here, the private sector, special educational institutions, and businesses is encouraged to give financial aid to the students, particularly those doing science and technology research or other nationally relevant projects. Next is the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sports. Chapter 1, General Provision. So in Section 54, this is the declaration of policy. The Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sports is responsible for administering the education system and supervising and regulating educational institutions as per the Constitution. This does not affect the charters of any state colleges or universities. In Section 55, it's all about organizations. The Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sports will be headed by a minister and one or more deputy ministers. The ministry includes the Minister's Office and Ministry Services, and the Board of Higher Education, newly established, and then the Bureau of Elementary Education, and the Bureaus of Secondary Education and Higher Education, Technical and Vocational Education, and Continuing Educational, all newly established. And also regional and field offices, the National Scholarship Center, and other agencies established by law, and cultural agencies such as the National Library, National Historical Institute, National Museum, and Institute of National Language. Next is Section 56. So in here, the National Board of Education is hereby abolished, and its appropriations, personnel, records, and equipment are hereby transferred to the Office of Minister of Education, Culture, and Sports. And in Section 57, these are the functions and powers of the ministry. The ministry shall formulate general education goals and policies and create long-term educational plans, and plan, develop, and implement educational and cultural programs and projects. Create rules and regulations for administering and supervising the education system, and set overall goals for the school system. Coordinate activities and functions of the school system and its cultural agencies. Coordinate with agencies involved in education and cultural development, and recommend and study proposed legislation. In Section 58 is all about report to the BATAS ng PAMBANSA. So, in here, the Minister of Education, Culture, and Sports will give an annual report to the BATAS ng PAMBANSA National Assembly on the following: implementation of the National Basic Education Plan, the state of the education sector, the effectiveness of educational programs, the insufficiency of funding, the impact of education on different regions, enrollment growth, the adequacy of academic facilities, and the concentration of low-income groups or the supply of teachers and non-teaching staff. The report, including comments and recommendation, is due 30 days before the start of a regular session. In Section 59 is another declaration of policy. Higher education will focus on providing better quality education, developing mid- and high-level personnel, and expanding research and extension services. The goal is to ensure equity, efficiency, and high quality in both public and private higher education institutions so that together they offer programs that meet national and regional development needs. In Section 50, these are the organizations of the Board of Higher Education. The Board of Higher Education is an advisory body to the Minister of Education, Culture, and Sports. It consists of a deputy minister as chair and 4 other members appointed by the President of the Philippines upon nomination by the minister. The members serve 4-year terms. The 4 members must have distinguished themselves in higher education and development, either in the public or private sector. In the initial appointments of the non-ex-officio members, the term will be 4, 3, 2, and 1 year, respectively. The director of the Bureau of Higher Education may participate in the board's discussions but cannot vote. The Bureau will provide the board with technical and staff support. The board may also form expert panels as needed. And in Section 61, these are the functions of the Board of Higher Education. The board shall make policy recommendations on the planning and management of the higher education system and its ongoing evaluation, and recommend steps to the Minister of Education, Culture, and Sports to improve governance of the higher education system at the national and regional levels, and then help the Minister make recommendations on generating and allocating resources for higher education. In Section 62, this is all about the Bureau of Elementary Education. The Bureau shall perform the following function: research, formulate, develop, and evaluate elementary education programs and standards. Research to prepare prototype curriculum designs, teaching materials, and teaching training programs for elementary education, and develop guidelines to improve elementary schools' facilities, equipment, and general management. In Section 63, Bureau of Secondary Education. The Bureau will research, formulate, develop, and evaluate secondary education programs and standards. Develop curriculum designs, prepare teaching materials, and create and evaluate programs to improve the quality of teaching and non-teaching staff at the secondary level, and develop guidelines to improve secondary school facilities, equipment, and general management. In Section 64 is the Bureau of Technical Mid-Vocational Education. So the Bureau will collaborate with other agencies to develop manpower plans, research, formulate, develop, and evaluate post-secondary vocational technical programs, and recommend educational standards, and develop curriculum designs and teaching materials, create and evaluate programs to improve the quality of teaching and non-teaching staff, and develop guidelines to improve the facilities and equipment of post-secondary vocational technical schools. In Section 65 is the Bureau of Higher Education. The Bureau of Higher Education will develop, formulate, and evaluate higher education programs, projects, and standards. They will provide staff support to the Board of Higher Education for policymaking and advisory functions. They will provide technical assistance to encourage institutional development programs and projects. They will compile, analyze, and evaluate data on higher education and perform the function as provided by the law. In Section 66 is the Bureau of Continuing Education. As the main implementer of the Ministry's non-formal education programs, the Bureau will provide learning programs or activities that meet the learning needs of those who cannot access formal education. They will provide opportunities to acquire skills that promote continuous employability, efficiency, productivity, and competitiveness in a labor market, and expand access to educational opportunities for citizens of diverse interests, demographics, and socioeconomic backgrounds. So in here, next is about the regional offices. In Section 67, these are the functions of regional offices. A regional office shall develop a regional education plan based on the Ministry's national plan, considering the region's specific needs and traditions, implement the Ministry's or agency's education laws, policies, plans, programs, and regulation in the region, and provide economical, efficient, and effective education services to the people in the area. In Section 68 is about the penalty clause. So in here, anyone convicted of violating Section 28, Chapter 3, Title 3 will be fined between 2,000 pesos and 10,000 pesos, and imprisoned for up to 2 years or both at the court's discretion. If a school corporation commits offense, the school head and the responsible persons are equally liable. Next is Section 69. So it is all about the administrative sanction. The Minister of Education, Culture, and Sports may prescribe and impose administrative sanctions as deemed reasonable and appropriate in implementing rules and regulations of this Act for any of the following reasons. First, mismanagement of school operations. Second, gross inefficiency of teaching or non-teaching personnel. Third, fraud or deceit in connection with applications for ministry permits or recognition, and failure to comply with conditions or obligations prescribed by the code of its implementing rules and regulations. And fifth is the unauthorized operations of school, course, or any component thereof, or any violations of requirements governing advertisements or announcements of educational institutions. Sanctions against schools will not affect the interest of students, teachers, and employees. In Section 70, this is all about the rulemaking authority. Here, the Minister of Education, Culture, and Sports is responsible for administering and enforcing this Act. They will promulgate the necessary implementing rules and regulation. And in Section 71 is the separability provision. In here, in any part of or provision of this Act is deemed invalid or unconstitutional, it will not affect the remaining parts of provision. And in Section 72 is the repealing clause. So all laws or parts of laws inconsistent with any provision of this Act are considered repealed or modified as applicable. And in Section 73 is about effectivity. This Act shall take effect upon its approval. Section 73 states that the Act will become effective immediately upon its approval. In other words, the law provisions will begin to be enforced as soon as it is officially approved by the relevant authority. So that's all about the BATAS PAMBANSA number 232. Thank you for listening.